Hi everybody, welcome to pre-record session 4. So in this session we're going to talk about the difficulties and processes for children and young people talking and communicating about child sexual abuse. So some research from the NSPCC, which was by Allnock, called No One Noticed, No One Heard. It might surprise you that over 80% of children and young people did try to tell somebody about their sexual abuse. And for those children, on average, it took 7 years for them to get to a verbal disclosure. The younger the child was when the abuse started, the longer it took for them to disclose it. Many disclosures in the research weren't recognised or understood by the practitioner, or maybe they were dismissed or played down or ignored. Maybe this was by the family as well, not an uncommon experience. And really shockingly, 90% of those young people had had a negative experience at some point during their disclosure process. There's a quote here from the study from the University of Bedfordshire, which says that before telling someone, you want to lock your mouth up. You feel like you have a dead end and you've hit a dead end and you don't know what to do and you're trapped and your feelings are trapped inside you and you just don't know what to do. You're worried and you're scared and you might feel angry or confused and you might feel like you've locked yourself in a prison and that prison is stopping your worries from coming out. So why don't children and young people disclose about sexual abuse? Maybe they're frightened that they'll incur more violence and they're just worried about the consequences generally. Maybe they didn't think anybody would be sympathetic. A lot of people think it's their own fault, and so how is anyone going to have compassion for them in those circumstances? Maybe they didn't think anyone would believe them because the perpetrator has told them they won't be believed. Maybe they didn't think anyone would then do anything about it, even if they did. What can somebody do? People feel like those situations are never going to end and they're hopeless and helpless. Maybe they're so shrouded in embarrassment of shame that they just couldn't bear the idea of telling someone about it. Maybe they didn't have anyone to tell or turn to, and that it was so humiliating they couldn't bear to do it anyway. For other people, it was a private matter, and that was something for their family to sort out. Allnock again talks about the really severe guilt and shame and how those children can be really manipulated by the person who's abusing them to think that it's their fault. And so the more you think it's their fault, the less likely you are to tell anybody about it. So the question is, should we wait for children to disclose? Should we wait for them to go through that 9 years of agony of wondering how to tell somebody? Or should we be better at recognising the signs and symptoms for ourselves and asking more pertinent questions and talking more to children about their emotional states? Let's think now about the term disclosure. So what does that term mean to you? What does it bring to mind when you hear that word? What we know is that different people will think different things about that word, and that could be across contexts and different sectors and different professionals. So it's open to interpretation what disclosure means. It might mean one person conveying their experience to another, for example. We know that children and young people convey these experiences in lots of different ways. So it's best if we understand it as a process, and that process is influenced by the characteristics and the qualities of the relationships in children's lives, and that they're not static, but they evolve over an extended period of time. So those things can happen over a period of, I remember one person saying that it took 9 years for them to disclose the first time they thought about it. They didn't get the response they wanted from this person, and then it took that many years later to actually get somebody to say what they needed to hear. However, what we also know is there isn't a great deal of research into professionals' experiences in recognising and receiving disclosures, but we do know at least about how young people view it and how they've experienced it. So in that vein then, what we know is that the relationship is really fundamental. So how I communicate with you and how you communicate with me, and how you understand that communication, whether that's through my eye contact, through the things that I say. It's really, really down to how that communication takes place between those two people. And children will do it in lots of different ways. So they might do it non-verbally, so they might write something, draw something. Again, we talked about this earlier, it might be around their behaviour. And they might do it directly, so they might say something like, I don't want to go to Grandpa's house anymore. Or they might do it indirectly and talk about how they don't like to play those games that they have to play with Grandad, for example. Thank you for listening once again. We're going to think about how we can communicate sensitively in the next live session. And as always, bring some reflections and bring some notes, and I look forward to hearing from you then.